everyone, welcome to my channel Lisa Life and this series, The Unheard, where I'll be having some conversations with people suffering from chronic illnesses and mental health issues, but also people who treat them. So here today with us is Irene. Hi, Irene.
Hi there.
So where are you, Irene? You're in the UK, right?
I'm in the UK, yes, in the Little Wirral Peninsula, which is just under Liverpool.
Oh, okay. Oh, I grew up between
You
Manchester
grew
and
up there,
Liverpool.
near
Yeah,
between
yeah,
Liverpool and Manchester.
yeah. So could you please just start by maybe introducing yourself and telling me why you agreed to do this interview?
Well, my name's Irene. As you heard, I live in the UK. I was brought up here. I'm actually nearly 65. I'll be 65 in a few weeks. And yeah, I think having had an illness for a while, I've always had this feeling of wanting to contribute in some way to help others. So when I saw your post, I just knew that I had to do it, really, just
Yeah,
to bring awareness to people, because there lots of people don't understand chronic illness.
yeah. What do you suffer from specifically?
I was diagnosed with ME, which is also known as chronic fatigue
Yeah.
syndrome, in 2017.
Okay, so now it's been 7 years then.
7 years, yeah.
Okay, and how did it come to that? So how did did it come to that diagnosis then?
So I was diagnosed in 2017 with ME, and it followed having a chest infection in the spring. But the viral feeling of following that just didn't leave me, and I was just, totally exhausted. Went back to work, just really couldn't cope. And then went to the GP several times, and then various tests and blood tests, and also the viral feelings, I think, or those symptoms have to be present for at least 3 to 6 months.
Because
So
did your GP suspect ME at the beginning, or
no,
because what were the symptoms you were dealing with at the beginning?
really just that like flu-like symptoms, swollen glands, sore throat, that feeling of illness, which I still have, which I'll come to later. But the they often call it, post-viral syndrome.
Yes.
And that is a thing. But when it goes on and on and on for 7 years now,
Yeah.
it's not post-viral. It's
Now,
ME. And so, yes, I was referred to the ME clinic, and they diagnosed it.
so your GP did have a suspicion after a while that it could be ME, or did
Not
you
really. It
introduce
was
the
me
idea?
who said, "Do you think this might be ME?" I mean, I was working in a GP practice at the time, and one of the GPs I worked with said, "I think you've got ME."
Yeah, because you were a nurse, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so this was a discussion you had with a doctor on a
Yeah,
personal
who I
level.
worked with,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
And
And so
so
I went to my GP and
yeah,
I said, "Do you think this might be ME?"
yeah,
And they agreed to do the referral, which included them doing various tests prior
yeah,
to
of
me going to
course.
see them. But that was when I got diagnosed. So I got diagnosed. I was ill from the springtime of 2017, and then I think it was about the October that I got the diagnosis. The clinic in Liverpool. I mean, sort of digressing to the guidelines for treating ME at the time, were sort of known to not be effective because they advocated for graded exercise
Yeah,
and cognitive behavioral
yeah,
therapy,
yeah,
because it's often, going back to years and years ago, they did think it was psychological.
yeah.
But the clinic in Liverpool didn't push those at all.
Okay.
And the clinic was more like an educating program. I was with the clinic for, I think it was almost 3 years.
Okay.
And it becomes a way of life,
Yeah,
because your energy levels are depleted with chronic illness
of course.
and tiredness. You start your day off with less than 100% energy.
Yeah,
And you have to, it's like having money in the bank. You have to spend it on what is necessary,
yeah, yeah,
because it will run out.
yeah.
So you have to pace everything you do.
So it's been a few years now that you
Mm.
haven't gone back to the clinic. And how how do the symptoms manifest now, and how do you cope with them from what you've learned?
Well, I think that in being from a medical background, I was researching everything I could get my hands on. So I started to pursue various avenues independently.
Hmm.
Um, I was fortunate enough to be able to pursue private, integrated care, if you
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
different things. And I always felt really sad that there was so many people out there who couldn't do that.
yeah,
Um, the opportunity wasn't there for them because
yeah,
they didn't have the money. It was
yeah.
all about money. So yeah, I pursued a clinic in London called the Optimum Health Clinic, and they were founded. It was founded by a guy who had ME as a child, as a teenager.
Okay, yeah,
Sort of saying that there were certain personality types that may be more prone to getting chronic disease. And after doing the psychology course and actually looking at myself and my personality traits, I realized actually I had all of them, most of them.
yeah,
Being a perfectionist, being a hard worker, everything has to be right, um, and never stopping, constantly working,
yeah,
um, and I mean that's one or few amongst many,
yeah,
but it was interesting to just look at my psychology
yeah.
and see, and actually it made me able to change that slightly, and look at the way I did things, which actually was beneficial for my body.
Yeah, of course, because I think if you're, I can fully relate to that because I've always been a very driven person,
Driven, that's a good word, yeah.
and I think it's but there's a very the line is extremely fine between being very driven and being an overdrive.
Mm, mm,
So I think it's on if you're constantly on the verge of that and that
mm,
you're constantly pushing yourself
mm,
because I mean if you're talking on a psychological in a psychological perspective, this goes back, far back in our
mm,
lives, because if we are constantly pushing ourselves and constantly trying to better ourselves and to be, to be more and to be better and to work harder,
mm,
it also, probably goes back to our childhood and
Oh
how
yes,
we
yeah.
how we
Being in control of
experienced,
everything.
yeah, and how we
Mm,
experienced, being recognized and being
mm,
seen and
mm,
being heard.
mm,
And if we haven't had that feeling fulfilled enough in childhood, I think we're
mm,
always as adults, pushing ourselves harder
mm,
to
mm,
be understood and to be heard and to
mm.
be seen.
Yeah. I mean, and going back to my experience prior to me being ill, it wasn't till afterwards when I looked back, I realized the stress that I was under
Yeah.
for at least 12 months leading up to me getting ill.
Okay.
I realized, looking back, how stressed I actually was.
In that
But
previous year to your
yes,
diagnosis.
yes, yeah. And I was always a person that was very relaxed and laid back, never got stressed. But it took hold of me that year, for various reasons, and I was just living in this constant flight, sort of
Fight off.
frightness. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely! I was constantly wired about everything, work, home, everything, and I realised that I was very, very stressed.
So
Mhm.
I think sometimes we also have, with the stress, I mean, there's so much related to that, to this tension and stress, but with that, if we are stressed, we don't sleep correctly, then we don't eat correctly
Mm,
either,
mm,
because we eat, we don't eat, or we eat too much, or we eat at
mm,
weird times, or it's all of that is um very important to look at when you're looking at the whole,
mm,
and not only, this and that symptom that are
mm,
appearing
mm,
today or that you are experiencing, at the time, because it's probably symptomatic of something that's been going on for a long
mm,
time.
mm,
Because you said in the clinic when you did the psychological assessment, they were talking about people who are more prone, or personalities that are prone to chronic illness.
mm.
But did you explore maybe different psychological avenues of things that may have traumas you may have experienced, or things that may have led up to this.
I did have some childhood trauma, and I'm nearly 65. I've had a lot of things happen in my life, and I suppose bereavement is one of them. I've lost people in my life that has changed me.
Yeah.
Losing my parents, and this year I lost my brother earlier this year.
I'm sorry.
He was older than me. But yeah, so I'm the last one now. So yeah, I mean, our life is a roller coaster of ups and downs, and there's been quite a few sort of things come up. I mean, I remember that I often I would spark into anger about the smallest thing, but it felt justified to me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't till after therapy I realized that my anger was about my trauma and not about what was in front of me, what was happening at the time I got angry. I mean, all those negative words that you say into your head, you start to believe them. So, I mean, I found changing those words in my head really helped by saying to myself, when I said, oh, they don't like me, that's not true. That's a lie. It's not true. And reconditioning my thinking, really.
Yeah. But you also have that circle within yourself. So if you're being very positive with yourself, then you can feel better about a lot of things, can feel more confident, you can feel calmer. And because negative emotions they take up so much energy. Being angry, I was a very, very angry young woman. And after I worked a lot on myself, I found out that actually that anger took so much energy from me. And I feel like it's like being angry all the time just drains you of all the energy, and you feel so tired at the end of the day because it's just, everything's bubbling up all the time and all of that tension. And on the contrary, being positive, having more positive thoughts, and having more of a positive behavior kind of fills you up. And you can be physically tired, but mentally not at the end of the day, because you're feeling good about yourself and good about what you did. And I think that's very, very effective.
I think a lot of it was lack of self-worth for me as well. I didn't have that self-worth.
Of course.
I think your mental health goes hand in hand with chronic illness, because you have ideas about, I had ideas about what I wanted to do with my life when I retired. Travel or volunteer, different things like that. And you lose all that because you aren't able to do it anymore. So, I lost my home, which wasn't that big a deal, because I was living in a family home and it was too big for me on my own. My children had all left. And so, the day I got my diagnosis, my house was up for sale the following day, because I knew that I probably couldn't go back to work full time. But after working for, I managed to work for about 11 months, and then I just crashed completely. I was going home from work and sleeping for 3 hours. I was ill on my days off, trying to reserve energy to go back to work the next day. But it all rests on money. Again, can I financially support myself without working? And at the time I couldn't. But when I sold my house, I had money that I could live on. I lost my job, I lost my house, and I lost my future in a way. And that brings on a grieving process, which causes you to downward spiral into a depression. The worst I got was actually last year, 2023, where I actually felt I had nothing to live for, nothing to, what was the point of being here? There was no future. I was just being in the house, feeling ill every day, suffering in that way, not being able to enjoy life as I wanted to. And it just spiraled into a much deeper place than I'd ever been before. I'm trying this and trying that and reading this and reading that. And it is a constant battle. And I was battle worn. And I just came to the decision, right, I'm going to stop. I'm not doing anything now. I'm not going to look at anything. But I did seek help with my mood, and I did
Yeah.
some therapy again,
Okay.
and I managed to climb out of that. And this year's been I've been back to the way I was before. Really, I had it, but that normally if I get a dip, it might be a few months. And I know I'm going to come out of it. That's how depression works.
Yeah.
But last year I didn't. It just went down and down and down and down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do think, our mental health is affected by, well, it's affected by so many things, but chronic illness
Yeah.
it's depressing to be chronically ill.
Oh yeah, it is. It's really because there, especially when there is no solution given to you, when the answer to all of your questions is we
Mm,
don't know, or
mm, mm,
um if you're asking, how long this is going to last, no one
mm,
has the answer.
mm,
Or people will tell you, well, there's no cure, so it's for life.
mm,
So I think it's just, I went through something, I've been through chronic illness a few years ago. Well, it started, I would say now, maybe 10 years ago, was it? Yeah, something like that.
mm-hmm,
It was 10 years ago where suddenly I was going through a very stressful and difficult and sad situation in my personal life, in my family life for years. And it was putting so much pressure on my shoulders that at one point suddenly I woke up one day and I had like a bug bite on my arm, and I had just three or four. So I thought, maybe I was bitten by a spider, or stung by
mm-hmm,
something.
mm-hmm,
And the next day it was gone. So I thought, well, just a bug bite. And then a few days later, I had the same thing on the other side. And then suddenly that didn't go away. And then I had more here and I had more
mm,
there. And then suddenly it was there. And I got these huge rashes that were just, it looked like enormous bug bites. So my skin would swell up and I would have these enormous rashes. And then it became worse and worse. In the end, I went to see a dermatologist, and they said it was idiopathic urticaria.
okay.
And idiopathic in is a medical term to say we don't know what you have. It's just like everything that is idiopathic is just they don't know the source of the problem.
Right. Mm-hmm,
So they started putting me on antihistamine treatments,
mm,
and nothing worked. And they upped the dose over the first 6 months. They upped the dose maybe 3, 4, 5 times,
mm,
and it made me feel weird, but it didn't help at all with my skin problem. And so it just got really serious to the point where I couldn't wear certain clothes anymore because my entire back was swollen up. And I went to see so many different specialists and doctors, and nobody could tell me why I had it. They knew it was urticaria, but they just didn't know why.
mm,
So I had just skin biopsies and whatever, and made loads of different tests, and they just couldn't say. And then I I told them many times that I had extremely high stress levels that
mm,
were almost constant, that I didn't
mm,
sleep, that I had very high stress levels and pressure situation in my life, and that I was almost persuaded that it was the high cortisol and the epinephrine that was causing this.
mm,
And I was dismissed by so many doctors
mm,
and so many specialists. So I was sitting down in front of the doctor, not at their level because I'm not a
no.
doctor, but
Mm,
just saying, I got the information. I
mm,
know how I am feeling because you
mm,
don't know how I feel inside.
no.
So expressing and trying to convey a feeling is
Mm,
so difficult.
very difficult. Yeah.
And trying to when you feel like you're getting, like it's driving you crazy, trying to convey how you're feeling without sounding crazy is really, really difficult too.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's always this very difficult moment where you're trying to find the right words to convey exactly how you're feeling without sounding mad and hypochondriac.
Yes.
And that's just so hard, because every time I had this feeling of rejection, and I knew what I was saying was right.
Mm.
And I knew that that was my life, and that was how I'm feeling at the time. And no one can tell me how I'm feeling inside. I'm the only one to know that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I always got those looks from the doctors, and all the looks, or they were saying, oh, well, we've been through this test and it's probably not that. It probably has nothing to do with the stress. And I got dismissed a lot. And then I was like gathering data on myself.
Yes.
And I was saying, I know what's happening.
Yes.
This is the situation. And nothing changed, in regards to the doctors. They didn't treat me differently. And then in the end, once I got out of the situation after 7 years, so I was ill for 7 years. And once I got out of the situation I was in, the stressful situation, it almost immediately went back to normal.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I told you so. But I think this, I've heard this so much with friends of mine who have chronic illnesses too, is the difficulty to explain what you're going through. It's really hard. So I don't know if you've had that with people around you, with people at work. Well, I mean, obviously, coming from a medical background, it's a bit different, but still, how did you experience the exchange, of after the diagnosis, explaining what you were going through and what your illness is?
Very difficult, really. I mean, I can look back and I have probably a few friends who've never been through it, but definitely have more insight into how it feels. Most people don't understand at all. And as you say, it's very hard to articulate how that feels, because, me saying, oh, I'm feeling tired is, take a normal feeling of tired and then multiply it by 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's almost feels like somebody's just pulled the plug and you have to stop. You can't even think straight when you get that tired. You can't speak properly. You can't form a sentence. Brain fog, which is one of the symptoms. It was very difficult, and I think that's one of the other reasons I wanted to do this, because I don't think anyone, no one's ever really asked me, what does it actually feel like in a genuine way, and I don't blame them for that. But it is nice to be able to express how I feel in this way. I think that'll help me.
Very grateful for that, that you're brave enough to do this with me. That's very nice. Because it's not easy. It's so personal.
I did the psychology thing, and then I basically have I've been taking lots of supplements, generally just trying to find things that will improve my health and make my health in an optimum way. And then I decided to go see a nutritionist at the Optimum Health Clinic. She listened to my symptoms, which are mainly viral, which is interesting, I think, to me. And she did some specialised blood tests. But again, I had to pay for those. It's not something I would get on the healthcare system at all. And that process the discovery was that I had 2 active viruses in my body. And if people don't know out there, when you get a virus, you have the symptoms go away after flu or a cold, but the virus stays in your body. And it can be reactivated.
Yeah.
The most common one that people know is glandular fever. That can be reactivated. And I was tested for that, but I have had glandular fever. It wasn't that was causing my symptoms. So I had 2 viruses that were active, and I are still active.
Mm-hmm.
And the treatment that she gave me was herbal treatment, and that brought my levels right down to practically normal.
Mm.
And I did feel better. So I've had a roller coaster of ups and downs with how I feel as well. But that can become reactivated, and that's what happened. It became reactivated. It shot right back up again, and I'm now back on the herbal treatment. And I've struggled all year, feeling really, really ill. And I feel ill every day. I wake up every day feeling like I've got flu.
Yeah.
And the tireder I get, the worse the symptoms are.
Yeah.
And Lyme disease, of course, is probably one of the worst because it's misdiagnosed so frequently.
Yeah.
Which I haven't had.
But also because you were already kind of on the path of ME, CFS, and all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, if that is already the intention at the beginning of the diagnosis, then obviously it's not that difficult to go from that to Lyme disease and say, well, we'll test you to see.
Yes.
But
yeah.
I mean, for most people with Lyme and ME and CFS, is if there's nothing, if they're in front of someone that is not trained for those illnesses, that doesn't know about them correctly, that doesn't know how to diagnose them properly, then they'll never go down that route. I think that's what's happened to Ren. But it's also happened, I mean, to so many other people with different chronic illnesses that, they're just going to take the symptoms they know and associate them with the illnesses they know about and the pathogens they know about. But I mean, if we take Ren's example, he was misdiagnosed different times, and it was years until he sat in front of a specialist who, after a few minutes, said, well, I think it's Lyme disease. But just because that specialist was informed and knew exactly what the symptoms were and knew exactly what to look for. So I think if you're on the right path at the beginning of the diagnosis, then it's easy to either rule out some of the chronic illnesses or test people for the other ones. But if you're not at all on that path and your GP is not thinking about that, then you can go down, years and years of misdiagnosis.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I do think that my diagnosis being so quick I was fortunate. But I think, with the Lyme disease, if you don't test immediately when you have those viral symptoms, I mean, it's one of the criteria for being diagnosed with ME is you have to have a Lyme disease test. But I don't think people realise how important it is at the timing of that test. Because if you do an antibody test and it's too long after the virus, it won't show. And you have to have an ELISpot. It's called an ELISpot test, which gives you a more detailed look at what active and inactive virus you have. And so, yeah, and I mean, going back to awareness and research is really poor. And I mean, I think a lot of the research is done by in a charitable sector.
Yeah.
And because chronic illness is so misunderstood, I don't know, they just don't seem to be interested in doing any research. I don't know. And holistic care is another thing, because our healthcare system is based around pharmaceuticals. Yep. And if there isn't a pill for it, they can't help you.
And it's always a little bit mind-boggling to see some of the things that, research funding is high on, and
oh, yes, yeah.
And then you have things like chronic illnesses where there's far too little funding. And I mean, I think sadly it's mainly because everything is profit based.
Yes, yeah.
There are situations like yours and so many other people that just go completely untreated, although I'm absolutely sure we would have the power and means to get to the root of this. And it's just not done. So, yeah, I think that what you're saying about pharmaceuticals there is very true and very frustrating.
Yes. So I think for me, my future is about it's in my control. I have to do something. I'm not going to get any help from my healthcare system.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really, that's why I want to push the conversation. I mean, I don't have CFS, I don't have Lyme, I don't have fibromyalgia, I don't have any of those, but I know what it is to be ill, and I know how it is to feel unseen. And I know how it is to struggle mentally, and so I can relate to some of the things. And I think it's just so important that we push the funding and research everywhere. It for in the UK, in America, here in France, in Europe, everywhere, India, and every place, Asia, because it's just so important, because there are millions of people around the world that have no help. I think it's amazing how we can live in a society today that is so evolved and that still disregards the people in need. Maybe illnesses, or people suffering from hunger, or I mean, we do have the means everywhere to help everyone. And I think it's really sad that the change in the system hasn't happened yet. But I'm sure it will, because at some point all of the systems crash. At some point, to be rebuilt, to become something else. So I do hope that in the next 10 or 20 years things will look different. I do hope that. And so I wanted to ask you, after all of this, after your life and the past 7 years, is there anything that you take out of all of this, and that you can just where you think back on your life, and where you can say, well, this is what I learned, and this is what I can apply today after everything that I've learned about life?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard question. So I've learned to take care of myself now,
and to listen to yourself.
And I've learned to accept help, because I was the one helping everybody else.
I
never asked anybody for help. So I've learned that. Somebody once said to me, Irene, if you don't accept my help, you're depriving me of the pleasure of helping you.
Exactly.
And I thought, that's so true, because when I help somebody, it makes me feel good.
Yeah, of course.
So I have learned to accept help. I've learned to relax. I've learned to do things that give me joy.
Yeah.
Like the music. I'm a very creative person. I like art. I love poetry. Everything like that stirs my soul. And I think that's why I became so intrigued with Ren. Because, his poeticness and his authenticity is just so touching.
Yeah.
And to hear him describe, I guess, in a lot of ways, the way I feel.
Yeah.
About various things, not just health or mind things, or political things as well, and everything. Is water to the soul, isn't it? Really,
it is.
Not being understood. So I've learned to just sort of be more of a person who can be. I can sit down now and not do anything, and enjoy the relaxation, instead of feeling like I have to do everything, and I have to.
That's great. Yeah. And so talking about, because you brought Ren up, when did you hear his music for the first time?
It was only this year, earlier on this year.
Okay.
Somebody I don't, a post came up on my Facebook page of the Hi Ren video.
Yeah.
And I watched it, and I mean, just anything, when it's art, I just get so excited.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And, I mean, I love music anyway. And that just encompassed everything about art, poetry, music, and depth of meaning. I mean, it is a blow away. It blows you away, that whole.
Oh, it does. You can always relate to him on some level, or relate to his views, or And so I think it's just because he is talking as a human being, and not only as himself and his point of view, but also as a human being, part of the world, and part of of all humanity. So I think that that's why there's so many people from all over the world that are just completely invested in him as an artist. I think that's great.
Yeah. After that, I listened to Troubles. And
Yeah.
of course, that totally told me. I mean, it obviously mentions his illness.
Yeah.
It mentions his illness in Iran, but
Yeah.
that intrigued me, obviously. And then I listened to Troubles, and then it was like, wow, this guy has had an illness that I need to know more about. And then I just took the deep dive. I did the
Yeah.
chapters, all the chapters.
Yeah.
And then obviously just worked my way through his catalogue of songs.
I've been quite amazed at my own reaction to some of the songs, because what I've realized now is that there are some songs that I've heard maybe 20, 30, 40 times now, because I like listening to them, and I have this tendency to hyper focus. So when I hear a song, it's always been the case. I mean, I started to do that when I bought my first album of Slipknot, which my parents were really unhappy about.
I can imagine, yeah.
And I would say I was maybe 13 or 14, and they had just put this album out, and I thought, oh, this band is amazing. And I just put the album on full blast for days and days, and it must have been horrible for them. For me, it was great because I love metal, but I mean, for them, it was awful. So I've been doing this all the time. So every time I come upon an artist or new song that I really love, I will just listen on repeat. It's like my brain needs to integrate the sound.
Most people do that, actually.
And then
most people do.
And then suddenly at some point, it's not that I get bored, but I hear something new and I'm like, oh, and then I go to the other one. But then I always come back to the songs that I really love. So there have been many or multiple songs of him that I've listened to a lot. And every time they get me on a different level. And that's just something so peculiar about him and about his writing and also about his performances, is that you can watch the same performance 10 times and feel a little bit different each time, or feel something different, or have a different comprehension of the lyrics. And I think it's really interesting because I haven't had that happen to me so many times, musically speaking, with other artists.
Ever, really?
And I think because he is really raw in his way of saying things. I've listened to a lot of rap too, and I've always adored Eminem, and he's a little bit, like that too. I think he's really amazing, and I wish him all the best, and I wish he'll be, he'll feel better. Is there some message of hope or resilience that you want to bring to the people that are going to see this video and to listen to you?
Taking everything a day at a time. I mean, as an achiever, as somebody who likes to do things and achieve things, I've learned to set myself one task a day that I can achieve, and that mentally makes me feel better. So just do one thing a day. I mean, there have been times when my hope has been a tiny little flame, but I've never lost hope in getting better. And I still believe, I still believe that I can. And that helps me to keep striving, to look for things to do, try.
I always thought, you never know what tomorrow's made of. You just don't.
No, you don't.
You don't know what tomorrow is going to be. You don't know in what mindset you're going to be next week. You don't know what's going to happen in the world next year. So, I mean, you just have to hang in there.
Yeah, hang in there. I think those are your words on your video, and I remember thinking, yeah, that's so true. You just have to hang in there.
Yeah, because sometimes
everything is subject to change, dare I say those words.
Exactly. Not quoting anyone there.
No.
Yeah. Well, I was very, very happy to have this conversation, and that you were willing to do this with me, Irene. I really thank you so much.
I thank you too, and I'm looking forward to other things in this project that you do.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm going to try to keep everyone posted, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it too.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.